Hello and welcome to Dan's ADV. This is my unofficial guide to the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route. So I've done this route 3 times in the last 5 years. I've filmed each trip, and in this video I'm going to share not only the footage but the route planning, discuss in detail the challenging sections like Ophir, California, Hagerman, some of the water crossings. I'm going to talk about bike setup, rider skills, rider gear, and some internet resources that will be useful for you as you plan your own trip. So if you like this kind of content, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, and let's get to it. If this is the first time you've ever heard the term Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route or COBDR, then finish this video and then go see the ridebdr.com website. They're the people that created this route along with a dozen other routes throughout other states. They have the free GPX tracks to download. They have frequently asked questions. They really have everything you would need, including videos of the routes on their own website. So the purpose of my video is not to replace any of their stuff, but more to augment it, let you know a little more details about how I do the trip. I typically do it in 4 days. I do it south to north. I'm going to cover which sections I do which days and why I do what I do. And give you a few tips and tricks I've learned along the way about getting to and from the start, etc., etc. So first of all, you'll notice in my video that I don't camp on the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route. I have camped on the New Mexico route. I've got a video of that here. Love it. It's amazing. Nothing against it. Would like to do it again someday. My biggest reason for not camping is time constraints. I just can only spend so much time away from my job, and I only want to spend so much time away from my family. It takes 4 days to do the route for me, typically, and then you're going to add 2 to 4 days of travel to get to and from home. So you're looking at a 7 or 8 day trip already without camping. For me, to add camping adds another couple of days. It just really slows down. Because you have to stop earlier, you have to set up camp, you have to break camp, you have to cook your own food. And all these are fun activities if you have the time. I'm just telling you what I've done in the past and why I've done it. So I said earlier I've done 3 trips. My first trip I did on a 2018 Africa Twin Adventure Sports. I was fairly new to adventure riding in general. I made some rookie mistakes. I tried to get up Ophir Pass on street pressure tires with way overloaded and just didn't have the skill at the time. So I had another friend with similar skill levels on another Africa Twin, but at the end of the day, we didn't make it up Ophir. We turned around and we took street around to Ouray, but we did all the rest of the BDR with no issues and had made lifetime memories together and just had a great time. I loved it so much that I wanted to go back and I wanted to take my son, which I did on that same Africa Twin Adventure Sports. I took my son and put him, he was young at the time, maybe 15, 16. I put him on a Honda 450L, and I didn't even tell him Ophir Pass existed because I was afraid he'd make me do it. So we just kind of drove on by, followed the rest of the route, and again, he didn't even have any drops, had an amazing trip of a lifetime together, father, son, memories, all the things. I love Colorado. I love doing this route. So through a really kind of bizarre string of events, there's actually a video about it here. I ended up taking a big trip last July, in July 2022, with 3 other guys, to pick up some KTMs in Seattle and drive them back to Oklahoma. And after that trip, we really just started bonding as riders and friends and hanging out and kind of dreaming together about future rides and training together. We got the Chris Birch Say No to Slow videos, which I highly recommend. We made tracks in fields to try and hone our skills. We found local ADV parks and off-road areas to go ride to continue to get better and push ourselves. And so when I came on this trip with these 3 other guys, this is the most prepared here in July of 2023 that I had ever been for the BDR. So I was on a KTM 890 Adventure R, which is a much lighter bike. I packed lighter, I had a higher skill level, and we did everything. We just blew through it and had an amazing time. The weather was great, no major issues. But that's my experience level. That's why I'm coming to you saying, this is what I've done. I've made some mistakes. I've done this trip 3 times. Let me tell you how I do it now, and I prefer to do it. So let me start with the fact that I trailer. I've ridden to the start of the New Mexico route. I've ridden to that, and I've ridden to Colorado several times from my home in Tulsa. There's really nothing to see between here and the mountains, and it's not a pleasant ride, and it adds time. A 12-hour day in a truck is one thing, a 12-hour day on a bike in the wind and the elements is quite another. So call me soft, whatever you want. I typically now trailer to get to Colorado if I can. So the 4 of us, we did trailer. You could start at the bottom or you could start at the top. Or you can trailer to the middle, which is where I like to trailer to, and the middle is about Buena Vista. Buena Vista is a great spot if you can find a place to park. I happen to have a friend. I can't give you their address, but I am able to park at their house, so I'm kind of lucky in that way. But there is a Facebook group that I'll talk about later that you can get on and potentially find a place to park in Buena Vista. But if you can't find somewhere in the middle is my preference, and here's why. It allows you to break the street sections up into 2 different days. So you take a day of street down to get to the start. I usually start south to north. And then at the end, you take a day to get back to the middle. And so you don't have to get to one extreme and then spend an entire day and a half just hauling through the entire state to get back to your trailer. To each his own. I'm sure there's reasons to do it lots of different ways. By starting in Buena Vista, I have a way to get down to the bottom utilizing some dirt tracks, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Before I talk about that, let me tell you this, I don't start at the start. So technically, Section 1, the start of Section 1, is in New Mexico in Four Corners at the monument, but that's 50 miles south of where the dirt starts in Colorado. And if you do the math, if you're starting in the middle and you're driving to the bottom, you have to go 50 miles past the dirt and then 50 miles back. You're adding 100 miles of asphalt to your trip. I can ride asphalt at home. This is not a pretty part of the state. I have no desire to go to see a Four Corners monument. So I start in Dolores. However, you can, but there's not a lot of lodging in Dolores. There's not a lot of food options in Dolores. So I typically stay 10 miles south of Dolores in Cortez. So that's where I start day 1. To start the actual official route, I start in Cortez and head north. To get to Cortez from Buena Vista, I utilize 2 dirt sections that are kind of fun. So first of all, you'll have to get a map and follow along with me. I apologize, but you get in Buena Vista, you're going to head out 50 towards Gunnison. And go. It's a pretty drive. You're going to go by a beautiful lake, and then you're going to get to the easy alternate section of the BDR. There's a section that they've designed in case you can't do Section 2. There's a section that goes up and joins Highway 50. Once you get to the west easy alternate, you're going to take that section down to Ridgeway. If it's lunchtime, when you get there, eat at Nar Tacos. Cannot recommend them highly enough. Awesome. Once you're done in Ridgeway, you're going to take 62 west again, and about the city of Knoll, not too far, you're going to see the Last Dollar Road. You're going to want to look that up, get that into your GPS. Last Dollar Road is a bypass which gets you some dirt, nothing too technical, but some incredible views that you can see here. You're going to want to take Last Dollar Road, and that's going to dump you out in Telluride. And then, depending on what time it is, you can eat ice cream, eat lunch, hang out a little in Telluride, and then take the street the rest of the way into Cortez for the night. So kind of day 1, once you're in Colorado for me, is Buena Vista to Cortez. Okay, day 2, which is really day 1 of the backcountry discovery route, of the 4 days I spend on the route. You're going to wake up sometime, I usually get on the road between 8 and 9 in the morning. If you leave Cortez between 8 and 9 and get on the dirt in Dolores, it's only 10 miles, you're going to have a fun rip through the dirt. There's nothing technical in section 1, and you're going to hit Telluride again. You're back in Telluride between 12 and 2 for lunch, somewhere in that range, depending on how fast you go, depending on how many stops you make. If you have friends that need to take a dip in the river, you know who you are. That will slow you down. However, you're going to get to Telluride for lunch. The afternoon of day 1, you're going to ride out of Telluride and pick up, again, you're done with section 1 by noon. So now you're going to pick up part of section 2, which is Ophir Pass. South of Telluride, get on Ophir Pass, and that will take you to Ouray, where you will spend the night. So day 1 Cortez, day 2 Ouray. Now Ophir Pass, I've heard, if you get online and read stories, you're going to hear everything from people breaking legs and breaking bikes and ending their trip, to other people saying they've done it 2 up on a GS and they're heroes and can't figure out what all the fuss is about. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and it really is a pass that the conditions change frequently. You can see here, this is my ride up Ophir Pass in July of 23. It was pretty smooth sailing for us. We didn't have any drops. We went from top to bottom in like 10 minutes. It's really not that big a deal. You do have to know how to ride. You have to be able to keep your momentum. You have to not panic when there's a lot of rocks. When you get knocked off your line, you have to be able to keep your balance and just keep going. But if you're a average to slightly above average rider, this really should not be a problem. It's certainly not in the conditions that we saw it in. I have heard there are times when it is a lot rougher. Certainly if it were raining, that would be an issue, but this is what it is. You can see what you're up against with Ophir. So this year, July 23, Ophir was not an issue. We made it straight up. So day 2 of the actual BDR, you're waking up in Ouray, you're partway into section 2. You have to cover section 2 and 3 today for my system to work. Buena Vista is your next good lodging and food stop. So it's very doable. You're going to want to get up early anyway, because this is the most popular section of the entire route as far as being popular with Jeeps and side-by-sides. You're going to get heavy traffic if you wait. So for that reason, and I'll talk about this some more in when to plan, I never try and hit this on the weekend. I always rearrange my trips so that I do not hit this section on a Saturday or Sunday or a holiday weekend. I get up early, get ahead of the Jeep traffic and the side-by-side traffic, and you're going to have a great time. You're going to come out of Ouray on the $1 Million Highway, which is named that for a reason that nobody knows apparently, but it is an epic street ride for about 20 minutes, and then once you hit dirt, it starts almost immediately. It's a great fun ride. You're seeing some footage here. You start with Corkscrew. You're winding your way up. Good surface typically, smooth, not too difficult, but a lot of fun. You're going to hit Hurricane, you're going to hit California, you're going to hit Cinnamon. It's the best 3 or 4 hours of the trip in my opinion, because of the challenge, because of the absolutely stunning scenery at the top of each of these passes. It's just a blast. In 2023, the most technical part of this day was California Pass, which I'm showing you here going downhill. Not a huge deal, but I did read on several forums guys that couldn't make it up this. I know it looks flat here, but that deep scree and that narrow path that I'm riding on made it very difficult to go the other direction. So because I was doing the BDR south to north, I was coming down the backside of California Pass, which is actually easier than going up it. Now, if you reverse that and you're going the other direction, it makes Ophir easy and California hard. So you could get online before you decide the direction if you're really concerned about not making one of those and figure out which one's harder which year. I can tell you California, it looked like it would have been a big challenge going the other direction, but since we were going our direction, we knocked it out and did make it to Lake City for lunch with no issues. Now after lunch, you're going to do the entire section 4 to Buena Vista. The verbiage from the official website says, quote, "This section is much different riding experience than the first two sections. The roads are wider and faster, allowing for quick miles." And that is very true. I mean, you're just cruising. There's nothing too technical. There is Cumberland Pass, which a sedan could go up. Eventually you make it to Cottonwood Pass, which was gravel at the time that the map was made years ago, but now it's asphalt, and it's like it's a racetrack. It is really fun. I mean, I'm just enjoying the horsepower of the bikes and letting them open up a little bit, going in the twisties. It's a beautiful road up to the top of Cottonwood Pass and then on into Buena Vista. The only other thing that you're going to experience is a water crossing, and this is the water crossing here that is between Cumberland Pass and where you start on Cottonwood. There's a field you go through, and this is the deepest water crossing of the whole trip. Now, we did have one of our 890's that blew a fan fuse, and later on in the trip we met 5 other KTM 890's in 2 different groups that all blew a fan fuse and all through an ECU error, all at that water crossing. So depending on how deep it is and what bike you're on, hopefully you won't have any issues. We did all get through it. The bikes continued to run. But that is something to watch for. You'll need to learn how to ride through water. I'd hate to put a new rider that had never ridden through water in this situation. So I would like to see you go through a foot or two of water several times at home in your training before you take on this water crossing. You cannot see the bottom. It's very muddy. There are some rocks and obstacles in the bottom that if you hit them, you just have to keep your balance and keep on the gas. But that's the only thing to watch for on day 2. Day 3, you're getting up in Buena Vista again, where you started, probably trailered to in my case, and you're headed toward Gypsum, where you're really going to stay in Eagle or Edwards, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the morning ride, there's nothing challenging. If you leave between 8 and 9, you can hit Leadville for lunch. Now Leadville's a little bit off course. You're not going right through it on the BDR. You're going maybe 3 to 5 miles out of the way. So when you see Leadville on the map, peel off, go eat lunch in Leadville. There's a Mountain High Pies. It's a great pizza spot, but there's lots of little restaurants. It's a pretty cool little downtown Main Street USA kind of feel to it. And then after lunch, 3 to 4 miles back, and you're back on the official BDR. So after lunch, you're going to hit the one remaining potentially difficult pass of the trip, and that is Hagerman. As you can see here, Hagerman is quite rocky. There's one pretty steep section, but for the most part, it's not the steepness of the trail, it's just the rocks. And it's not that it's that difficult to not fall over, it's just you feel like you're beating yourself up, you're beating the bike up. I mean, it is really it's a suspension test for sure. The other issue is if you do fall over on Hagerman, with as many protruding rocks as there are, you're looking at a potential for damaging your bike or yourself. So it's not the worst. It's not something that I would avoid, but I'm just telling you, if you've never ridden rocks like this, it can be, it's a learning experience for sure, and it's a shakedown test for your bike and your luggage and everything. To make sure everything stays on your bike as you go up Hagerman Pass. Once you get through Hagerman, the rest of the trip is fairly smooth. You're going to end up at Gypsum on I-70 is where the official route takes you, the end of this section. However, there's very little lodging and very little food in Gypsum. And what a lot of people do is go about 10 to 15 minutes to the east on 6. Instead of taking I-70, you take 6, you go to Eagle. However, on our most recent trip, we didn't book Eagle in time, and it was full. There was no vacancy, so we went 30 minutes on I-70 to Edwards, which had plenty of lodging, really nice restaurants. But it is 30 minutes on I-70, which of course means in the morning you get to do 30 minutes on I-70 again to get back. So there is that. Okay, day 4, the last day. You're going to get up in the morning wherever you started, either obviously or Eagle or in our case Edwards, and you're going to head back towards Gypsum on I-70. Once you get there, you're going to head north. Section 5 is a smooth section. It's a lot of big, really smooth gravel roads, a lot of asphalt. You're going along the Colorado River. It's a beautiful section. It's kind of a time to relax. You've been through all the hard stuff. Take in the scenery. It goes pretty quick, and you can make Steamboat by lunch. No issues there. Between 12 and 1:30, you're going to make Steamboat, and from there you kind of have some decisions to make. So section 6 is only 81 miles, and it comes out of Steamboat and it goes to the Wyoming border. At issue is section 6 ends in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Like literally you're on a road that has a sign, and it's not like a BDR sign, it's like an old farm sign. There's just nothing at the end of the route. So you have to make a decision where to go after 6 before you ever get on it. So a couple of choices. What I've done a couple of times is go up 6, and then once you get off the BDR, you're on asphalt. You can go west and go all the way around and back down to Craig, Colorado. In the past, I've eaten lunch in Steamboat and made Craig by about 5 or 6 o'clock, so for dinner, and then stay in Craig, Colorado. Alternately, if you really like Steamboat, you could go up 6 and back down in one afternoon. It's not inconceivable. 6 travels pretty fast. There's nothing technical. It's 81 miles, so now you're looking at 162 miles. But it certainly can be done. But before you start 6, think about how you want to finish. And 6 is also the most skippable section of all the sections. Like if you can only do 5, or you're done, you're tired, whatever, you really haven't missed a whole lot, in my opinion. I'm sure I might get blown up in the comments by somebody that loves 6, but if you're gonna skip one section, in my opinion, that's the time to do it. All right, so let's talk about when to go on your trip. My most recent trip, July 2023, we actually started on July 29th, and as of that date, Ophir Pass had only been open for about a week, and Hagerman still was not officially open. Hagerman didn't open until like a day before, maybe 2 days before we got to it on our trip. So that being said, if you plan mid-July, early July, you definitely risk having to bypass what I feel are the most epic portions of the trip, and that's the passes, both for the scenery and for the challenge. I kind of don't see the point in doing the BDR, in my opinion, if you can't do the passes. So I would not plan the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route earlier than the last week of July. Granted, there's record snow this year, and if you can be flexible with your timing, you can just wait and watch the passes. And again, I'm going to give you some resources where you can do that. And when everything's open, go. But if you have to plan ahead like we did and choose a date and ask for time off and get your life arranged so that you can make a trip ahead of time, then don't do it before the last week of July, in my opinion, early August. Also, one of the things that I look at when I'm planning is, when are you going to do section 2? I start there and work backwards. I do not want section 2 to land on a weekend or a holiday weekend, especially, just because of the Jeep and side-by-side traffic that you have to face and how much more enjoyable that section is without the Jeep and side-by-side traffic. I know a lot of you probably watch Everride. He's got a video from years ago where he said he stopped going to Colorado simply because of the traffic. It really, when you get caught in it, it's super frustrating. So I start planning my trip by what day am I going to be on that pass, and then work backwards when I'm going to leave Tulsa, and then make sure that it's within that range where the snow is going to be melted. All right, so let's talk about bike prep. Let's talk about bikes. First of all, what bike do you use? Can you do this on a big bike? So the answer is absolutely, you can do it on a big bike. In fact, the BDR organization is all about making these trips big bike friendly. That being said, if you have to ask, can I do this on a big bike? The answer is probably you're going to have more fun on a littler bike. It's just, there's very, very little advantage to having a monster 500, 600 pound motorcycle on this particular trip. There's so little asphalt that you have to ride, and the comfort level of these mid-sized adventure bikes is so high right now that I don't see a ton of advantage unless you just have something to prove, or you really just like the challenge of wrestling a big bike. And there's a lot of guys with a lot of skill that would have no problem. But there's also a lot of guys that don't have a lot of time to ride, that are new to this sport, that would really do a lot better on a mid-size adventure bike or a dual sport. So that's my recommendation if you have to ask. That probably means you're not an advanced rider and you should be on one of those bikes to really get the most enjoyment out of the trip. That's not to say you can't make it through, but how many times do you have to pick up a 500-pound bike at 12,000 feet elevation? It really begins to wear on you. So as far as bikes, if I were to do a guided trip, and I've kicked the idea around, I've thought about what are the minimum requirements that I would have to come on a trip with me. As far as the motorcycle is concerned, I'm looking for a well-maintained bike. You don't want somebody in your group that has skipped standard maintenance and that's going to have preventable breakdowns while on the trail, because that messes up the trip for everyone else. So do your general maintenance. There's always unavoidable things that you can't predict that happen, and it is what it is, but it would be very frustrating for a breakdown to be due to poor maintenance or just a motorcycle that's not reliable to start with. Bring a reliable, well-maintained motorcycle. I'm looking for a skid plate. I recently watched a video of Big Rock Moto on a KTM 890 with the stock skid plate, and he went over a rock and it dented the plate to the point where it cracked his oil pan. And that made me just think, man, we can't be doing that on the trail. That's just a trip ender for somebody and a real kink in everyone's schedule if that happens and it's preventable. So I think a really good skid plate and crash protection are essential for the bike. You need to be able to drop your bike without it damaging to the bike to the point where it won't run. You need to be able to take a hit with a rock and not have it damage the bike. So skid plate, crash protection, luggage. I've been on 2 trips. My first trip where we had to have duffel bags that were stacked. It was motorcycle luggage designed for a motorcycle, but I've never seen stacked duffel bags work well off-road, especially on Hagerman Pass and doing jumps and all the things that this backcountry discovery route's going to throw at you. Even a single duffel bag strapped to the back, unless you take a lot of care to figure out how to strap that thing down, you just fight it the whole trip. The load shifts. Things get loose, you have to stop and adjust. It's really worth investing in solid luggage that is attached to your motorcycle. And I like pannier racks. I know some people think they're ugly. I like the fact that there's no straps holding my luggage on. All my luggage is solid mounted to the bike, and makes it easy on, easy off, but that's a whole other discussion. You don't have to use pannier racks, but use something, a rackless Moscow, a Tusk, something that's designed for an adventure bike to handle the kind of vibration and jostling around that this trip is going to throw at it. And then tires. You've got to have at least 50/50 tires. I'm sure somebody's ridden this thing on street tires, but why? I mean, you're going to be going up some really steep inclines. You're going to want your tires to grip, and you're going to be coming down for that matter, and you have to be able to stop. So I would prefer 50/50 or even more dirt-oriented tires, TKC 80s, Motaz Ral Zs, something along those lines that is a dirt-focused tire. It's still going to be fun on the street, but there's not a ton of street on this ride. As far as personal gear, obviously a helmet goes without saying. In my opinion, after observing this sport for the last 7 years and watching YouTube videos and reading forums and studying, it seems like the majority of the injuries that you're going to see are lower extremity injuries, feet, ankles, legs. So other than a helmet, I pretty much start with boots. I would say wear the most protective boot that you can possibly be comfortable in for an extended extended number of days for an extended hours. If that's an ADV boot for you, great. At least have an ADV boot. If you can wear a Tech 7, even better. But everybody has their risk-reward profile. We're all riding motorcycles. There's all inherently a certain amount of risk that you'll never be able to mitigate. So wherever you are on that line, I just feel like the lower extremities are the most likely after your head to get injured in a big ADV fall, because typically these falls are low speed and it's step-offs where if you step into a hole or if you hit a rock with your leg and that bike falls on it, the more protection you have on your legs and feet, the better. As you move up, a lot of guys don't even wear armor. They don't wear a jacket. I try and wear a jacket if it's not too hot. There are times and sections, especially on this BDR, when it's wide open and I just am hot. I don't feel like I'm endangering myself too much. I will put my jacket on the back of the bike and ride in a jersey. But I've always got the boots, I've always got the helmet and gloves, and I've always got the pants, some sort of adventure pant from Climb typically. So as far as rain gear, I've been very, very fortunate. In none of the 3 trips have I had much rain. I know I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where the opposite is true, and so I don't have a lot of advice there other than be ready. Be ready for cold, be ready for hot, be ready for rain. Layers is kind of the key. If you can have an outer shell like a Climb jacket that's got the abrasion resistance in the armor, and then have a puffer jacket that you can stick under that if you're cold and be able to put something thin over it if it rains, to me that's ideal because you can kind of be ready for any situation. But if you're going to go with only one suit, just be prepared that there are going to be times when you're uncomfortable. You're either going to be too hot or too cold, obviously, depending on which suit you choose. As far as like random stuff to bring that you may not think of or that everyone may not think of, I kind of try to be a pseudo guide on trips. I'm not officially a guide, and I was really with friends on this trip. I wasn't guiding them per se, but I have an extra tube or two, a tire pump, tire irons, a medical kit, a battery starter in case there's a dead bike, emergency communicator, special tools for each bike. So I'm carrying all that so that everyone else doesn't have to. Now, I've been talking about resources. I've mentioned it several times, so let me go into that. There is a Facebook group for every BDR route. So I would join the Colorado Backcountry Discovery Route Facebook group. This is an awesome group. In fact, one of our riders lost a jacket. It blew out of the Moscow beaver tail. It was a Climb jacket, and we lost it day one. Before we actually even got to the start of the BDR, we were on Last Dollar Road. Posted that on that Facebook group, and a fellow rider found it and got on there, saw that we had lost it, and returned it to the other rider. So an amazing group. In fact, several stories in this trip where there was a lost phone. One group lost it, another group we saw return it, a lost pannier bag. So what a community, the adventure riding community. But get on that Facebook group. That's also where you're going to get your most current information. Ride BDR is the official place, but that Facebook group, typically they're going to have up-to-date information on pass openings, trail conditions, fire closures, workarounds, and you can hook up with other riders to get a group together from that group. There's another website I'm going to put in the description called Bush Ducks, that will show you all the pass conditions. You kind of have to search the website for the passes in question. It's not specific to the BDR, but that's where I found a lot of up-to-date information while I was impatiently waiting for the passes to open this year, hoping that they would be by the time we got here. So your 3 main resources, again, are ridebdr.com, the Facebook page, and then the Bush Ducks for the pass openings. Well, that's going to do it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. I would appreciate a like and subscribe. If you made it this far in the video, post "made it" in the comments just so I know that somebody actually made it to the end. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.